Okay. What are some of the forms of entertainment that the beings on your civilization enjoy?
We have talked about the fact that I am a sculptor. There are those that enjoy the idea of singing. There are those that enjoy many other kinds of artistic expressions. Exploration is also a form of entertainment as long as education is involved as well. The idea is that it can take any form spontaneously that any particular individual in our civilization feels the need to express, although some of them are going to be relatively different than the forms of entertainment that you experience. However, there are things that are sort of similar to physical activities, such as sports, so on and so forth, but a lot of things also take place on energy levels that you don't necessarily experience yet.
Do they also have a group of beings that enjoy sort of more the shamanic type of activities with communication of plants and animals and other, well, I mean, it seems like you do that all
Yes.
the time,
Yes,
but
of course. We don't necessarily consider that entertainment in the way that you ask the question. That's just our normal daily activities.
so what have
I'll
you
give you a
discovered?
particular example.
Yes.
One form of entertainment, in particular practiced by a lot of children on our planet, is the idea of what might loosely translate in your language as to popping through dimensions. So the idea is that you can sit still and you can pick a number of parallel realities to relate to. Again, it can be a random choice. It can be decided in any number of ways. Maybe even someone in the group of children will say the number 12. And so all the children will, in that moment, allow themselves to feel a rush of their consciousness popping through 12 different parallel realities in that moment, and then afterward sharing the different experiences of the different experiences that versions of them had in those different parallel realities. That is a form of entertainment as well as education.
And like children here, they love to pretend, like they can pretend that they're a certain animal or they can pretend they're a fireman or something like that.
Yes.
How is that, those ideas expressed in your culture?
More truly experientially. In other words, they can learn to shift their consciousness to experience life literally from the perspective of an animal.
So I could even see this imagery of like a bird flying and being able to see through the eyes of the bird
Yes.
from that vantage point.
Yes.
That's very exciting.
And to some degree similar to what you have referred to as shamanistic.
Um, NASA is sending a manned crew to fly by the moon in summer 23. This seems synchronous with the opening of window of contact.
It
Will
is.
you, can you update us on anything that may happen during that kind of experience?
There will be, as before on other flights you haven't been told about, observations of various craft.
And like in Virginia Beach, I guess the craft have been buzzing um, ships.
On many places on your planet, this has been increasing. In that area, as you already have heard, off the coast of what you call your San Diego area, and a few other places around your planet, sightings are now increasing if you actually pay attention to the statistics.
And the reason for that is
The beginnings of disclosure.
so they're just making themselves more well known so that
Yes.
we will stop ignoring,
Yes.
in addition to the changes we're already.
Yes, and having more information to release as authentic.
Oh, I see. And what about the idea of them shutting down the nuclear codes if there's like a
Again,
nuclear?
simply a message, as we have delivered before, that you are not permitted to have thermonuclear war, because it affects far more than just your planet and your dimension. Now, as we have said, there can be isolated, small tactical nuclear incidents as long as they do not affect interdimensional beings and consciousness, then that may not be prevented. But the idea of the shutting down, erasing, or altering the launch codes of many of your thermonuclear missiles is a direct sign that we are still watching and still giving the message that global thermonuclear war will not be allowed.
Thankfully. In your time, can you describe what Earth looks like from your vantage point?
Equating our time frame to your timeline, you will find that even though there are villages and cities per se, they're not built up in the same way that they are now. There are far fewer places that are built up. Many of them are far more like villages. There is a lot more forestation and greenery on your planet. Certain ecosystems have returned and are thriving. The idea, therefore, is that now, by our time, many of you have gone off planet to explore other worlds. You have colonized other planets that have been laid aside for you to do so. So the Earth, in that sense, has been allowed to relax a little bit more into its natural state, even though there is still much activity on your planet, still many high-level technological achievements. None of them anymore are polluting, and they allow for the natural growth to occur on your planet, and also for the shifting of humanity, and also, of course, the arrival and interaction with many different extraterrestrial species.
And our relation to the cetaceans in the ocean and the condition of our oceans?
They are thriving.
And humans respect, at that point, humans respect cetaceans as another sentient life form.
Absolutely. Now, again, please remember, this is not the world you are on. This is the version of Earth that you will be shifting to if you continue to navigate your consciousness in that direction by following the formula and making positive choices, because that version of Earth already exists and is a version that is far more representative of the idea of contact in a way that we can interact with, because it's far closer to our vibrational frequency. So the idea, again, is it's not the Earth you're on now.
So at the same time as that Earth is communicating with you, other Earths would be in other forms of chaos or disarray.
Yes, of course. Every possible conceivable variation of Earth is already ongoing right now.
Right.
So it's just about the idea of navigating to the one that is more compatible vibrationally with the idea that I have just described.
Yeah, it really is empowering to recognize that by changing yourself, you're able to interact with another level of Earth or be on a different Earth in a sense.
Well,
And
no, it's not in a sense at all. Because the idea is that that's what you're doing right now to create the idea of the side effect called time. You're going through billions of parallel reality versions of Earth right now every second. It's not like it is.
So the fact that we have such free will at this stage in our development to choose a dark path or a positive path, but the ultimate effect of that will be experienced by each person because they'll see it reflected in the Earth that they are inhabiting.
Yes, of course. Because again, you can't experience what you're not the vibration of, and conversely, you will only experience what you are the vibration of. So there is an Earth for every vibration.
So I'm assuming that the younger people that are taking this journey would have a greater opportunity to experience a much more advanced Earth once, over the span of their lifetime, say, versus someone who was born in the 50s or 60s and who are at a different stage in their life process.
Well, yes, in general, although again, there's always exceptions no matter when you're born. It just depends upon your modality of perception and thinking and what you choose to buy into as a belief system. So yes, you might say the younger generations have been given more options because of the evolutions in thought that have happened on your planet. it may seem more probable and more likely for them to choose things that will lead to those versions of Earth. It doesn't mean that someone born earlier can't, but we understand what you mean by that.
Is there a connection between pandemics and massive change as almost like a precursor to
Yes.
massive change?
Yes, there is. Because again, massive change in the collective can bring up all sorts of fear-based issues in the collective, and those fear-based issues can play out in physical reality in a way that then allows you to deal with the consequences of those fear-based issues and release them so that you can allow yourself to transform collectively more easily. But it has been a common precursor to massive change in many of your societies that you will first cause some form of either disease or catastrophe that represents the letting go and the releasing of the fear-based beliefs. But it's not that you have to do it that way. It's simply been the way you have done it because you haven't known any other way to, shall we say, face those things except by bringing them into your reality in a way where you're forced to face those things and deal with them.
So the people who transition during a pandemic, would those individuals then have chosen not to make the change and that they preferred to either, well, do something different, let's just say?
Well, that can be the case for some of them, and it's not about not necessarily having preferred to make the change. It may simply be that they didn't have the tools to understand they had that option.
Because that's one thing that happens in a pandemic, as with war. Now, is the same thing true of war, that it also is a precursor?
It can be. It can be. Again, you cannot necessarily always generalize these things. You have to look at the different individuals and groups within it and what it is they are choosing relative to those ideas that are expressed by a collective or at least a group within the collective. So yes, it can represent those kinds of shifts about to occur by the playing out of all the fear-based ideas beforehand so that you can be done with them, let them go, get over them. But again, remember that if they keep occurring, you haven't really dealt with the causational beliefs within yourselves.
So in a way, it's almost like it's a negative tool that can be used in a positive way, but because the earth, in a sense, is still steeped in a lot of negativity, we may still choose mechanisms for transition that are negative in a sense.
Yes, because again, it forces you to face certain things. So in a sense, it's kind of like you paint yourself into a corner and are forced to face certain issues.
Now, as far as our connection with the Sirius civilization,
Yes.
can you share with, for us on Earth right now, what kind of relationship do we have with the Sirius beings, and who in particular are we in contact with?
You are in contact with the beings, the physical version of the civilization known as the Nomos. The relationship between you is one of guidance, mentorship, and education. For they brought to your world all sorts of information and tutelage and mentorship on a variety of subjects, like agriculture, mathematics, architecture, so on and so forth. So it's kind of literally like a mentorship relationship that you have with the amphibious culture that comes from the star system of Sirius.
And as far as the dolphins and the whales, are they interacting with the same level of consciousness as we are, or perhaps something different?
Well, they're interacting with the physiological species as well as the non-physical consciousness on a higher level of sixth density that is also associated with the Sirius star system.
Thank you.
Yes.
You also previously made a prediction about the Eastern Bloc, I guess, and a change.
Yes.
Is there anything you want to mention about that?
You are seeing some of the variables of that playing out now in what is going on in your Middle East with regard to the idea of Palestine and Israel setting up certain conditions that, depending upon what choices they make, can spread and radiate and ripple outward to either positive or negative effect.
There's been a lot of questions about Sasquatch.
Yes.
Can you talk to us a little bit about their existence, perhaps their civilization, their art forms, anything else you can share about them?
Well, as we have said, they are the natural evolved hominid of the earth. If certain branches hadn't been altered genetically by the Anunnaki, you would all be Sasquatch today. But the Sasquatch, being very close to nature, have learned many of the different ideas of how nature operates. It's one of the reasons why they can peer into other dimensions and actually shift into other dimensions to make themselves relatively elusive. In some sense, many Sasquatch now consider or still consider Homo sapiens to be aliens, since they contain alien genetics that the Sasquatch don't contain. It's one of the reasons why, to some degree, they still avoid you. So the idea is, again, they are willing to open up certain kinds of dialogue in certain kinds of formats and forums, but you have to sort of look at them as a more indigenous culture, very, very closely bonded with nature, because they understand themselves as nature. And therefore, they have developed many forms of communicational languages that are all nature-based. They can very easily speak to many other kinds of animals and also plants in a variety of ways. And this is the way their culture is based. It's based on different formats of communication and experience in nature and in other dimensional expressions of nature. So art form, in a sense, although this is a very loose term with regard to the idea of Sasquatch, can be the way in which different forms of communication are expressed between different dimensions of nature, different expressions of nature in their cultures. You could say that a very close representation of the idea that you might be somewhat familiar with would be that their entire culture is shamanistic and capable of interdimensional interaction and interactive interspecies exchange with a variety of species, not only in your reality, but in other dimensions as well.
Like how would we perceive them in versus a chimpanzee? In
You would
terms of
perceive
their
them.
development, their way of communicating with each other, do they still have remnants of primate behavior?
Well, to some degree, but again, in a much more natural way. The idea is that you would simply recognize them as an intelligent hominid.
So we would still see them as human and distinctly different from animals in
Yes.
terms of their language,
Let me put
their
it to you this way. When you understand more about the idea of cetaceans, you will see the Sasquatch similarly to the difference you see between a cetacean and a fish.
yes, because we notice a certain kind of democracy in cetacean organization.
Well, and sentiency and communication. They have language, and so do the Sasquatch. You will see them as a sentient civilization on their own terms. And the idea is that you don't see them as human, you will understand them as, well, I don't necessarily think they would necessarily appreciate being called humanoid, but the idea is that you will see them as their own evolutionary path of a sentient expression on Earth.
Okay. Talking about something called mirror work, which would be similar to like psychomantiums and that idea.
Yes.
Were these methods part of our culture going way back and maybe starting in Atlantean times,
Yes.
or
It began in Atlantean times and progressed through Egyptian times and spread out to many other cultures in the early days of your civilizations. Yes.
and what is the benefit of working with those kinds of tools?
Well, again, like any permission slip, it taps into certain things where people have certain sensitivities to recognize that the idea of reflection, which is what a mirror symbolizes, puts you in touch with not only different aspects of your own consciousness, if you're willing to reflect on them and look with honesty in the reflections in mirrors to see your true self, but also can allow you to look beyond the physical realm as if the mirror is actually a window into the spirit world. because it can function that way for certain aspects of your consciousness as well, and allow
There's some,
ease of communication with spirits.
so is there something with the subconscious mind that allows it to use it and it gets the
Yes.
conscious mind out of the way in a sense? Is
Yes,
that
the sub and unconscious minds, which are higher versions closer to the idea of the higher mind. And therefore, yes, getting the conscious mind to relax and allow yourself to see through the looking glass, so to speak, as opposed to just seeing your own physical reflection, is what will allow it to sort of turn into a window into the higher mind realm, which is the realm of spirit, and thus make more ease of communication with spirits, if used that way, in the way it is described to be used, in the darkness with a dim light, not seeing anything in the mirror other than a blank canvas, so to speak, like a wall. Thus, then getting your analytical mind to relax itself because there's nothing in the mirror to analyze except existence itself, presence itself. And so it becomes a window rather than a reflector.
you once mentioned that that your existence is very similar to being in a lucid dream
Yes.
for us.
Yes.
Okay. And that one of the keystone aspects of that is that you can see the symbols for what they are,
Yes.
as opposed to us, the symbols we see, and also because of our training, we think of them as solid. We think they mean one thing,
Yes.
like a chair, or whereas if you were to see a chair,
Yes.
what might that symbol represent?
A sensation of relaxed support.
So that's part of the evolution of consciousness also, is that we start to be able to see through the symbols that are presented to us.
And of course, they will change depending upon the circumstance and the situation. Again, similar to the idea of the permission slip you know as the tarot cards, because even though there may seem to be a so-called quote unquote fixed image on the card, there are many different attributes to that image, many different kinds of objects that are represented in any one of those cards. And for someone who is sensitive to that particular permission slip and can allow themselves to read them, different symbols at different time, depending upon the interaction of different people, will stand out to the reader in different ways than they have before, letting them know which aspect of the overall image is the most important to look at and what meaning that may bring with it relevant for the person they are reading for. So even a chair can represent different things. It can represent the concept of relaxed support. It can represent the concept of paying attention by staying in one spot and being educated by something, just as you have your own chairs and desks in school. It can represent many different kinds of things, depending on how many legs it has, how many backs it has, if it has any back at all. So again, even the symbol of the chair can shift according to what's going on at any given moment in anyone's consciousness that is choosing to use that symbol to represent the state of being they happen to be in at that moment.
And there's been questions about how you can achieve the same kind of effect without having to take a psychedelic or
Yes.
a plant medicine. And it seems like it's also connected with the idea of being able to see through symbols when
Yes.
you are in these altered states.
Yes.
Is there other ways of attaining those states of consciousness?
Of course. Of course. There are many different permission slips. The idea of channeling is one of them. Being in the channeling state in the brain allows for these kinds of perceptions.
Okay, and then even some of the things like drumming and
dancing, drumming.
meditation.
There are many different kinds, meditation, many different kinds of permission slips that generate certain states that will allow for these kinds of perceptions to seem more obvious and natural.
And whereas in a plant-based medicine experience, it may go on and on for hours,
Yes.
you can actually achieve the same thing simply by getting a download when you're in an altered state that
Yeah.
you generate naturally.
Yes, of course.
And then it unspools within you so that you have recognition of the information you're receiving.
It unspools according to the time frame and the timing that is relevant for the person that has received the download, yes.
I see. Um, can all kinds of cats, including tigers and lions, can they see interdimensionals? I mean, and elementals and
Yes, they don't always do it, but they all have the capacity, yes.
but is this something in domestic house cats that has been amplified?
Well, the idea of interacting with humans can amplify it. It can actually also dampen it. It just depends on who they're interacting with and why. Because the idea of humanity being connected to many different kinds of things, the cats can utilize a relationship with humans to magnify and amplify a reason for seeing particular elementals or particular spirits that might be relevant for the particular human that they're, as you say, hanging out with.
Which leads to the next question about zoo animals who are changed because they interact with humans and they deeply interact with human consciousness.
They can.
And
They don't have to, but they can.
and they're in a situation where they're actually cared for very strongly. There's a lot of concern about their well-being, enrichment, and all of these things. So how are we changing animal species and their abilities, I guess, psychically, um, by developing almost new species that have these kinds of experiences?
Well, again, like anything, it's a reflection of the evolution within your own consciousness. So you will form relationships or generate species that are more reflective of the level of consciousness that you're operating from.
So it's very interesting to watch them change, and the idea that animals can be friends with animals that heretofore would have been enemies.
Yes. It is to some degree not only a reflection of what we just said about the shifts in collective consciousness on your planet, but it is also to some degree the precursors of what we experience in our world about all animals being symbiotic instead of predatory.
So we're just seeing the early signs of that now.
Yes. Very
And
early.
our consciousness evolves.
Correct. And you become less predatory and more symbiotic as